Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and change makers who are working on solutions that face our fellow individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Koster, your host. This episode is part of our series exploring COVID-19's impact on nonprofits and small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area. Back in April of 2020, when we decided to create this ongoing series on COVID-19's impact, first on nonprofits and then on small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area, we, like you, had no idea how long the pandemic would go on and what the health and economic impact would be in our community. As we enter the second half of 2022 with the latest explosion of cases from the most recent COVID-19 Omicron mutations, along with the masking requirements being changed and folks getting their vaccinations, our communities are still struggling to deal with the health, economic, mental, and societal impacts of the ongoing global pandemic. This all adds to the ongoing uncertainty of our ever-changing indoor and outdoor, vaccinated and unvaccinated protocols, and the politics of the pandemic that will drive how we all come back together as a unified or fractured community. We will continue to shine a spotlight on the nonprofits and small businesses that make up the fabric of our community, along with the founders and staff who are struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their operations, services, and sustainability until we can all get to the other side of the pandemic. Along the way, we will also share with you all the amazing solutions that our nonprofits, small businesses, foundations, and government leaders are working on to help us all get to the other side of the pandemic and come together to rebuild our communities with more economic, social, and environmental equality.
We'll walk around and all of a sudden we'll stumble on somebody who's a really incredible player. And maybe they've never even played for people. Maybe they've never even played outside of their living room. That happens really often. And we'll approach them and say, "Hi, would you like to be on the program next year?" And they're like gobsmacked. It never occurred to them to play for people in public. And then next year they find themselves on the program playing for people and surrounded by applauding folks. And so this is why I call Flower Piano an interactive music festival, because it really works with the public in this way.
One of the topics we've covered in our 2+ years of producing this special series on the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on our community is the impact the pandemic is having on our live performing arts organizations. This episode features the voices behind the annual Flower Piano Show in Golden Gate Park's Botanical Garden. Our featured voices are the Gardens of Golden Gate Park CEO Stephanie Linder, along with the co-founders of Sunset Piano, Dean Mermel, and Mauro Ffortissimo. I'm joined remotely by the Gardens of Golden Gate Park CEO, Stephanie Linder, along with the co-founders of Sunset Piano, Dean Mermel, and Mauro Ffortissimo. Welcome to Voices of the Community, Stephanie, Dean, and Mauro. This is really one of my favorite events that you've created here in San Francisco, and it's especially wonderful during the pandemic because it's outside. And so I'd love to just have each of you share a little bit about your own background, and then we'll get into the background of the organizations, and then, of course, the creation of Flower Piano Show. So, Stephanie, why don't we start with you, and you can kind of set the context, if you will, of the gardens and the show.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, and thanks for having us. So I've been with the Botanical Garden for a little over 4 years, and we merged with the Japanese Tea Garden and the Conservatory of Flowers July 1st to become the Gardens of Golden Gate Park. With that, all 3 sites are free admission for residents. We've also offered now a multi-garden ticket, so people can come and visit all 3 sites on one ticket. So we are committed to being accessible to the public. We're part of the Museums for All program. So folks who, regardless of residency, if they are on SNAP benefits, and CalFresh, Medi-Cal, they can come, they can bring their families for free. We are proud to be in a public-private partnership with the San Francisco Recreation and Park Department, and they take care of the facilities, the horticultural maintenance, and a whole variety of really critical infrastructure needs here at the 3 gardens. On the nonprofit side, we get to do extraordinary things like work with these guys, Dean and Mauro. This will be our 7th year partnering with them to bring the community Flower Piano. And it's one of my very favorite things that we do here.
Thank you. All right. So Mauro and Dean, tell us a little bit about your creation of Sunset Piano, and then we'll get into the creation of the Flower Piano Show.
Sure. I'm a musician and a painter. I always work with pianos. I take my part and make sculptures with piano parts. So I have a lot of pianos. And a few years ago, we do one piano down in Half Moon Bay where we have a large studio and play outdoors by the beach. And that was kind of the beginning of Sunset Piano. And then we did an installation of 12 pianos throughout the San Mateo coast. And we had such a great time hiding from the authorities, unfortunately, because we didn't have that many permits. And after doing that, we got invited to work in San Francisco to do installations on downtown, mostly around the mid-market corridor. At the same time, Dean and I were looking to, a better place to set pianos because we were used to doing them by the water and the beach. And at that time, I think Dean approached the American parks because we don't do something around the Golden Gate Park. But that was the issue. But what happened with the pianos at night?
Our idea originally was to hide 12 grand pianos in Golden Gate Park. And we thought that was a great idea. And Rec and Park went, well, let's think about that. And then next day, and I thought that was going to be the end of it, frankly, because, we think we have great ideas all the time, but very few people take us up on them. But then they called us back and they said, actually, it's the Botanical Gardens 75th anniversary. And we think maybe something can happen with that. So they invited some representatives of the garden to meet with SF Rec and Park and with us. And we hit on this idea of putting the pianos in Botanical Garden. And then the structure of Flower Piano kind of came out of that.
It's just staying with the whole idea of dropping pianos in the middle of an amazing botanical garden. Turning to you, Stephanie, has anything like this been done at other botanical gardens that you know of in the United States or perhaps around the world?
Many botanical gardens have summer concert series or other kinds of programming like that. And I'm sure, Dean and Mauro can tell you there's lots of examples of public pianos being placed in plazas and on streets. But there's nothing exactly like Flower Piano. It's pretty unique. And one of the things that my colleagues at other botanical gardens across the country ask me when they hear about this event, we describe it, they say, well, what do you do with the pianos at night? Or what happens if it rains? Or, they start thinking of all these things that, well, we're really fortunate. I mean, we do get some pretty foggy, drippy days where we've had some issues, but by and large, it doesn't rain here in the summer and we have this mild climate. I mean, these guys, their team does a lot of work to keep these pianos dry and tuned and all of that. It's not easy, but we're able to leave them outdoors overnight. They're covered, protected, but a lot of gardens don't have climates where they could do that. So, but it's pretty unique what we do here.
Turning to Mauro and Dean, how do you, and perhaps you do this as a group, but I'm always fascinated as to the programming itself. So this year is even more robust, if you will, or perhaps more elaborate, each night with its own theme, and an artist has actually written original music to it. So share with the audience a little bit about how you create the programming itself. Was that, part of your original idea? Has that progressed, if you will, over the years?
It's definitely evolved. The original idea was that it would be purely acoustic piano music, and we would have the pianos available for the public to play on weekdays. And originally, it was a longer program. It used to be 12 days, but for several practical reasons, we've shortened it now to 5 days. But originally, it was going to be open to the public on weekdays to play the pianos. And on weekends, we would program the pianos with local professional musicians. It's still structured pretty much that way. During the week, there's always pianos available for people to play, although we have spread some programming into the weekdays now, which we're hoping will alleviate some of the crowds on the weekends, which last year were pretty intense. But yeah, that's the basic idea. It's a mixture of keeping open pianos for anyone to come in and play from the public and having professional musicians, of which there are some amazing people in this town, programmed to play at specific times. And the thing that you were asking about, I think, was this special program that we're leading off with this year called Fall and Fly, which is a piece of music written for 12 grand pianos specifically for that. It's written by a local composer named Benjamin Gribble. He's been working on it for 3 years. It's going to be conducted by the director of the Stanford Symphony, Paul Phillips, and played by our best musicians. So it's an incredible 23-minute piece in 3 movements that is incredibly moving. We're also going to have some special guest speakers, authors Rebecca Solnit and Gary Kamiya. It's amazing that everybody lives here in this city because they're really well-known, incredible authors, and also a poet, Agneta Bach. And so they're going to contextualize the evening with these themes of renewal, regrowth, transformation, which are the kind of themes that are at work in this piece of music. And Fall and Fly will take place on Wednesday, September 14th at 5:00. Tickets are almost gone. So people really need to jump on it if they're going to get a ticket.
And that's taking place in the Great Meadow itself because of obviously the number of folks playing the 12 pianos and everyone who wants to buy tickets, etc. Can you share a little bit more about Sunset Piano? Is it a collective of musicians or is it just
a very small collective?
No, it's just Dean and I. We're 2 artists that love pianos and music in general. And we have, through the years, even in San Francisco, most of our friends are musicians. So we call them Sunset piano players, but, they're all good on their own.
We don't own them.
Yeah. So if someone was a musician who's listening to the show and wanted to play, they could show up and play one of the open pianos.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, we have discovered many incredible people that we later we'll walk around, and all of a sudden we'll stumble on somebody who's a really incredible player. And maybe they've never even played for people. Maybe they've never even played outside of their living room. That happens really often. And we'll approach them and say, "Hi, would you like to be on the program next year?" And they're like gobsmacked. It never occurred to them to play for people in public. And then next year they find themselves on the program playing for people and surrounded by applauding folks. And so this is why I call Flower Piano an interactive music festival, because it really works with the public in this way.
Agreed. I mean, that is really one of the amazing parts is to stumble upon someone playing. And I've been there when someone just, there's an open piano and someone sits down and starts playing and then the crowd starts to gather. So if I was a piano player and I wanted to participate in next year's show, for example, how would I do that?
Just look for us walking around. Get lucky. It's getting harder every year. Quite frankly, we had to say no to a lot of people this year. Each year we have to say no to more people because, we have somewhere between 60 and 70 individual musicians and ensembles that play each year. And there's still more people who want to play. So we do what we can. And like I said, we're expanding our programming into the weekdays now. But it's still very well curated. We try to really curate this so that we put together a program each year that has a lot of diversity, a lot of variety, a lot of different kinds of music from different parts of the world, but it needs to be piano-centric. Sometimes I'll get an email from somebody saying, "Hey, I play the didgeridoo really well, and I'd really like to play a flower piano." I go, "Well, it's not really our thing, So yeah, we keep things piano-centric. But outside of that, if you're a good player and, want to play, sure, send us an email or something and we'll look at what you're doing.
Could you walk us through the program a little bit? Because I noticed this year, obviously there's music and poetry. There's a puppetry show, it looks like, tied to music. So besides what it sounds like an amazing Fall and Fly show.
Yeah, if I could chime in too on our community partner performers, in addition to the incredible array of performances that Dean and Mauro curate, we also have ongoing partnerships with the San Francisco Symphony, SF Jazz, Community Music Center, and others. And so, they're just bringing incredible performances into the mix. There's sort of like 3 kinds of performances: the Sunset Piano curation, these community partners, and then this open playtime. And it's all fantastic. So I want to just underscore, as we're talking about programming, there's more weekday programming than ever before. And a lot of it falls kind of into that lunchtime happy hour time frame too. So even if you're working that weekday, hopefully you're working from home now in the pandemic era, you could sneak over and catch some. And even if there's nothing on the schedule, just come. Even if there's nothing on the schedule that resonates with you, or you don't know who doesn't matter. Just come. There's 12 pianos. You're going to love something and it'll be worth it.
And there's bound to be somebody who will blow your mind at any time of day. The weekdays are amazing because the weekends, it's kind of overwhelming. You kind of don't know where to turn. Sometimes I'm walking along on a Saturday and I'll reach a certain point where it's like, there's Dave Brubeck happening over here. There's Chopin happening over there. And there's some honky tonk like just ahead of me. And I'm standing there and I'm kind of like, what am I hearing? What do I do? And it's a delightful conundrum to be in, but it's a bit much sometimes. And during the week, you can be walking along and stumble onto somebody like playing some Eric Satie or something. And there's a goose standing next to the piano. It's like crazy. There's beautiful magical moments available during the week that are harder to come by on the weekends. So yeah, come during the week. It's a whole other way of experiencing flower piano that's really great.
I think part of it is that you get to see the garden a little bit more, right? Because when we have the larger crowd, it's still you're in the garden. It's an amazing setting. It's beautiful. But I find that you really notice the animals, whether it's the geese or the hawk flying over. You notice the redwoods. You notice the various plantings around you and what's going on. And you can kind of experience the garden a little bit more as you're experiencing the music.
Well, and staying with you, Stephanie, this is a two-part question and really for everyone, but COVID-19 hit, everything kind of shut down. People were trying to get outside and do more. And obviously the garden shut down as well. How did COVID-19 impact the gardens itself and then the flower piano show?
So we were closed for 11 weeks and we laid off about half the staff at the Botanical Garden. When we reopened, we were able to hire about half of those back, and we are just now actually getting fully staffed up again. When we reopened, it was amazing. We have had record-breaking visitation the past 2 years. We have had 1,000 more member households. We've never been busier. And Flower Piano was no exception. When we brought Flower Piano back last September, we had 60,000 people come in 5 days. We used to have 60,000 people come in 12 days and 3 nights. So it gives you a sense of just the demand, the anticipation, and it was emotional. It was joyous. I saw so many reunions. As I walked around last year, I saw so many people getting together for the first time since the pandemic and doing it at Flower Piano.
You're listening to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. Voices of the Community is supported by a grant from the James Irvine Foundation, dedicated to a California where all low-income workers have the power to advance economically. More at irvine.org. This is George Koster, your host, and if you're just joining us, in this episode we're discussing how our performing artists are bringing back their musical magic at the Golden Gate Park's Botanical Gardens annual Flower Piano Show. Our featured voices are the Gardens of Golden Gate Park CEO, Stephanie Linder, along with the co-founders of Sunset Piano, Dean Mermel, and Mauro Ffortissimo. Let's get back to our conversation about their work to provide the platform of the Flower Piano Show for anyone who plays piano to show up and perform, along with hundreds of musical performers in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Mauro and Dean, you're performing artists, right? And I think most people don't realize that 90% of our performing arts employees, if you will, were all furloughed, laid off, et cetera, because everything shut down. And at least you have the benefit, if you will, performing outside. How did the COVID-19 pandemic affect you guys on an individual level, but then also, your ability to bring Flower Piano back?
Yeah, well, impact us, impact everybody, obviously. And then when we did it last year, unfortunately, got cut down to half of the time instead of 12 days to 6. In many ways, I think we're liking it now. The main difference was that we used to have 2 weekends, and those 2 weekends we couldn't buy more players to play. So that's why the numbers are a bit crunched with players that we had to decline. That was kind of, as an organization, the biggest impact on us was to make it shorter. We working still navigating through that. In a personal level, yeah, like everybody else, we were, had to be at home. As a gig worker, I think we were lucky to get some government help. Some other places they weren't as lucky, and I think most of the musicians will survive with that. And I'm playing sometimes outdoors in places that maybe weren't supposed to, but I personally kept doing that, taking a piano here and there without advertising any of it. And I figure, hey, we're doing it. There's a thing that Dina and I always say, that music is a healthy thing that we do. It's something that we strongly believe that even the flowers and the plants and the trees, they really enjoy having music being played for them. So that's, I think that the pandemic didn't stop us from that.
Yeah, it was a difficult time, no question. And we really missed, having that time of the year that we always look forward to, flower piano. And so it was a difficult year for me personally too. Yeah, I felt like the whole world kind of paused. For me, what has come out of that time is a renewed appreciation for what we do, what Mauro and I do together, and what we do as a collaboration with the garden, because it's beautiful that, when you're forced to not see each other and kind of shut your life down in a way, and then you get to re-experience it again, I see that as being an opportunity. And so now I'm really, again, enjoying producing flower piano with these guys. And the collaboration with the garden is really wonderful. As artists, we don't get to have that experience with many people. And the garden has been a wonderful partner in this. And I can't imagine how this could have happened without the kind of chemistry that we have. So coming out of the pandemic, I have a renewed appreciation for that now.
So, Stephanie, how has the entire flower piano show impacted the gardens? I think for a lot of folks, they knew that they were there. They would sometimes visit, but it really became a destination.
Yeah, it's certainly brought us a lot of new and different visitors and new members, some new funders. So we raise funds to cover flower piano. We don't make any profit on flower piano. Those out-of-towners who do have to pay admission, that money goes into something called the Garden Improvement Fund, held at the city, that is reinvested back into the gardens. The budget for flower piano this year is $300,000, and we're about $50K away from that goal. So we are still seeking sponsorships, but this has become our signature event. It's one of the things that we're known for. And I just think it fits in Golden Gate Park. Golden Gate Park's a little over 150 years old, and music has always been a part of this park. So it just works here. It just makes sense here. And so you think about Hardly Strictly, you think about opera in the park, you think about outside lands. The community wants this programming, and they're voting with their feet. And so we're happy to do it. But, it's a heavy lift. We have to go out, and we're really fortunate to have both individuals, companies, foundations who love this, and they want to help us provide it as a gift to the community. And we're happy to be able to do that.
Staying with that, Stephanie, how can folks who are listening to the show support the show, but also the Gardens of Golden Gate Park?
Well, first of all, come, bring a friend. If you bring an instrument, bring it. But also, become a member. It's a great way to also hear about other programming that we have. We have lots of cool offerings, health and wellness, botanical art and drawing. We have book and author events. So become a member. There will be folks around asking for donations, especially you residents who come for free, drop a few bucks if you can into the donation box. We really appreciate it. The other thing is, it's not too late to sponsor. So you as an individual, or if you have a company and you'd like to sponsor, all the information's on our website. So sfbg.org/flower piano. It's all there. We'd love to have you. And also you can just send a donation, and you can write on the check or in your email that you want it to help support flower piano. We'll make sure it's accounted for in the right place and helps keep flower piano going. Lots of ways to give. Also, we still need volunteers, and it's a great volunteer gig. It's a great way to come meet people, experience the music and the event, and you can sign up online and bring your friends.
And they get in for free, right? Because they're volunteering.
Absolutely.
And so is there a place on the website to actually volunteer?
Yes, if you go to that same website, and it's SF as in San Francisco, BG as in botanicalgarden.org/flower piano, one word. And there are a bunch of buttons there. And one of them is volunteer, and sponsor information is there, general donation. You can also just become a member. The other thing I do want to say is that members get expedited entry. So if you see that long line for the 12 piano extravaganza in the middle of the day, fly right back in if you become a member. And there's all kinds of perks. And that membership gets you into all 3 gardens for a year. So we'd love to have you as a member. You'll get our regular newsletters and just learn more about the world of plants, plant conservation, horticulture, botany, all the things that we're doing.
And are there various member levels, or is it just one membership?
There are a lot of different levels. I will tell you it's that same web address, but it's /membership to get there. And it starts at a family dual membership is $85. An individual membership is $70. And then they go up from there. It includes admission to more than 350 botanical gardens across the country. So take your membership card, or better yet, download it on your phone, your membership, and take it when you travel. It's a great thing to do when you're in other cities. Go check out their botanical garden. Gets you discounts at our bookstore. We have a fabulous bookstore, and our plant arbor. You can buy plants to bring home. So a lot of good value. But I think the most important thing is that you're supporting the good work and the development of our collections and our education programs. We serve thousands of children free of charge every year, and run all kinds of volunteer programs, engagement programs, and your contribution helps us do that.
If someone wanted to be a sponsor, is there individual sponsor level? You don't have to be a big company.
Well, to be a sponsor, yes, that is a little bit pricier. Let's see here. So our sponsor levels and benefits are all listed on the website. The lowest level starts at $2,500 and goes up to $100,000.
Great. And then as we began, you mentioned that folks who are on SNAP, for example, could participate for free.
Yes. So if you live in San Francisco, you don't have to pay admission. Just bring proof of residency. But if you're outside of San Francisco, and if you receive SNAP benefits, CalFresh, Medi-Cal, just bring your card and bring your family, and there's no charge. So Museums for All is a fabulous program. It's a national program. The Institute on Museum and Library Services, as well as the American Museum Association, the City of San Francisco, we all participate, and it makes museums free or very inexpensive for families with low incomes, and we are just thrilled to be a part of it. I should also mention that recently all veterans and active military personnel come free to the gardens. So lots of ways to take advantage of that. And so we don't want anyone not to come because they can't afford it. And volunteering is another great way to come and be a part of it.
That's great. So I'm going to ask each of you to share your favorite story of working on flower piano, and start with Dean.
Oh, wow. There's so many. Well, I've seen 2 people get engaged. I was standing on the moon viewing deck one year, and somebody was playing something really beautiful. And there was this young couple that was kind of in the corner, and the guy kind of pulls something out of his pocket, and the woman was like looking down, and all of a sudden her eyes went wide, and then, they had a big hug. And I ran over them and I stuck my face right in their face and said, "Did you guys just get engaged?" It was like the most off the wall thing to do, but they did, and they were so happy, and this music was playing, and it was like the most romantic thing you could imagine. And I totally spoiled it, but I had to know. And then since then, I've seen another couple get engaged and another couple get married at flower piano. So it's very romantic atmosphere, and I like that about flower piano. It brings people together in all kinds of ways.
Now you could rent parts of the garden for a wedding. Is that true?
Yes, you can. Not anymore during flower piano, but you definitely can.
I have a couple of good memories of having kids playing. Sometimes, just cannot believe they're so good. I remember once I was supposed to play somewhere, and I'm playing my little routine or some classical pieces, and then there is a kid that might be maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8, standing there looking, and I say, "So you want to play?" I say, "Yeah." And I ask him, "Are you good?" And say, "Yeah." "Okay." So I let you play, but don't be better than me. And he started the piano playing like Rachmaninoff. And I say, forget about it after that. I let him use my remaining time on the spot. So that's really a beautiful surprises. Or sometimes people that come and say, oh, I used to play, I don't play anymore. And they do feel like they're not jaded there because you see, a goose going by with squirrel and they see that piano played. And the following year they come over and they tell us that they went back to take classes again, or that now their kids are taking classes. And that's really, really encouraging to keep doing what we do.
Yeah, that happens a lot,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. More music, less bombs.
And I want to go back to you, Dean, because you mentioned something earlier in our conversation just about the relationship that both you and Mauro have created over time with Jennifer and her team. Can you share a little story about the creation of that partnership?
Well, it's an unusual situation, I think, because we're sort of an arts organization. Well, what we really are is two guys and a website, but we're just two artists that just had this idea, and we had no experience in actually producing a large event or anything. And then we approached the garden, and they had no real experience doing anything quite like this either. So there had to be a lot of trust there, and there was a big learning curve in the beginning as we learned how this whole thing worked. It's still ongoing and we're still evolving. There's things that we deal with every year, like how to have a large crowd of people at a music event that is taking place in a sensitive, natural environment, in a garden, essentially, without hurting any of the plants. So we try to work closely with the horticulture people so that we're not making them upset, which is easy to do, but we try to really listen to them. I used to be a docent at Audubon Canyon Ranch, and Mauro, lives in a beautiful spot in Half Moon Bay. And both of us are very, very enthusiastic about the natural world. And the garden is the most beautiful example of that in the city. So we're really concerned with letting the garden be its best and show its best at this time, and working with us to bring our musician friends to this environment. It works really well. We don't always see exactly eye to eye, but we get through it. And at the end of the day, we're all really glowing at the end of this thing at what we've accomplished together. I think it's rare as far as an artist and other kind of organization relationship, but we're really grateful for it.
The first time we did it was in celebration of the 75th anniversary of the Botanical Gardens, and it was just a one-time deal. I think we were lucky. At the time, the director was Sue Cliff, and she's also a piano player and loved pianos. Did that make a difference? Yes, you really push for that to happen when some gardeners were thinking, no, how are you going to move a piano there? They're going to destroy the garden. And so having her on board from day one was kind of pivotal to keep going and growing. So, yeah, she's no longer in the garden, but she will come and join us.
She's a sponsor. She's still very, very much involved and comes back in her retirement. She still gets to support this event. The way I look at it and how I explain to people is we're more than the venue. The garden is part of the experience. So the people of the garden are part of the experience, but the experience that, walk in, there'll be a huge sign and it'll have a map and it'll show you where all the different pianos are placed. And you're visiting the world in 55 acres, right? It's 55 acres. You'll be in the redwoods, the California native section, the Great Meadow, the Garden of Fragrance, the Rhododendron Garden, the Ancient Plant Garden where you learn about the evolution of plants, the Zellerbach Garden, which is just a stunning garden that we have dedicated volunteers that keep the perennials just perfect, and it's just stunning. So you explore the garden, and each setting for the piano is really different because of the garden space, right? So it's not like going to a concert hall or even just to a big field. It is a very unique experience that interacts with the garden itself.
And Stephanie, two things. One, the last executive director's name, said she's a sponsor.
Sue Ann Schiff.
Thank you, Sue Ann, for being an ongoing supporter. And then could you share a story with the audience about the whole Flower Piano show and its importance to your organization?
Oh, there are so many. I would have to say Serene on piano with the awesome orchestra at the central fountain there where we have the dedicated pavers, right? 100 different players. You watch them sort of workshop and rehearse the piece, for half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and just watch the whole process, right? And how they are going to do it. And then you get to see them do it. And it's just incredible. And they're coming back. I have a schedule in front of me, so I wouldn't forget to say this. From 4 to 6 on Saturday, September 17th at the Fountain Plaza, the awesome orchestra. They'll be doing 2 performances, one from 4 to 5, one to 5 to 6, and it's going to be incredible. So, I'm not a musician. I will say I did a lot of college radio and worked in concert promotion in college. So I love music. I'm a professional at being the audience. I learned so much about the process of how an orchestra comes together, and to see it condensed into an hour. And then, the players who are the soloists on the piano, the sort of feature artists, just remarkable.
That's great. All right. So turning to our final question for everyone, and that is, what are some of the good things or positive things that you feel have come out of the COVID-19 pandemic to support the Flower Piano Show and the performers in the gardens of Golden Gate Park? So I'm going to start with you, Stephanie, since you were just sharing your story.
Well, we know that being in nature and music have healing qualities. This is scientifically proven again and again. And doing those things together, experiencing music, playing music, singing, dancing in nature, it lowers your cortisol levels, it lowers your heartbeat, it has all these positive mental and physical health benefits. And, it's good for you. Flower piano is good for you.
That's a good one. And Mauro?
It's about community building too, so I think garden, flower, plants, people, music, poets. We do have a corner called the Beat Corner, in which there are local San Francisco poets and music happening together. And after the pandemic, a lot of us lost friends and family. And so it's great to see everybody coming back to celebrate that too.
And Dean?
Yeah, it feels like a return. Flower piano, there was a point last year when I had to get from one end of the garden to the other in a hurry. And we have these little electric carts there that you can get driven around on if you're a VIP. So I managed to get somebody to drive me from one end of the garden to the other. And it was this sea of smiling faces that we were trying to get through. And we couldn't do it. It was like everything went into slow motion, and all I could see was smiling faces. And the cart couldn't move. We were surrounded by this sea of happy humanity. And I thought, oh, this is the best thing that's happened since the start of the pandemic, because it really felt like a return. It felt like we had all come back. I had to get out of the cart and walk, because that was as far as we couldn't go against all the people. And it was the highest I've been in so long. It just felt so good. And flower piano is this unusual environment where things like that can happen, and lots of magic happens there. I think it's the best response to the pandemic that we as humans can make.
That's great. Thank you. Is there anything, Stephanie, that I didn't cover that you wanted to make sure we cover?
Just the logistics. September 16th to the 20th. So that's a Friday through a Tuesday. Fall and Fly is early evening on September 14th. The main event from the 16th to the 20th, that is free for San Francisco residents. It is included in admission for everyone else. That admission on weekdays is $13, weekends $17. We will find a way for you to get here if you can't afford that, as we talked about. So we want everyone here. This is everybody's garden. Everybody is welcome. You are allowed to picnic. So feel free to, there will be some food and beverage, but very little. So I encourage you to shop our local merchants, pick up a sandwich, a bottle of wine, a picnic blanket, come make a day of it, relax and enjoy it.
Bring a camera.
That's great. I want to thank you, Stephanie, for sharing your wonderful work at the gardens of Golden Gate Park, and Dean and Mauro for sharing about Sunset Piano and the co-creation of the Flower Piano program. We'll make sure that listeners have your contact information, website, social media, along with the links to the upcoming Flower Piano show scheduled from September 16th to the 20th of 2022 at the San Francisco Botanical Garden, so they can buy tickets and get engaged with the gardens of Golden Gate Park, Sunset Piano, and the Flower Piano show and support your work. Please stay safe and healthy as we all work our way through this latest stage of COVID-19 pandemic and all of its variants. Thank you very much for being on the show. That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening to the voices of the Gardens of Golden Gate Park CEO, Stephanie Linder, along with the co-founders of Sunset Piano, Dean Mermel and Mauro Fortissimo. To find out more about the Flower Piano Show and to become a sponsor or just buy tickets for the ticketed events, please go to sfbg.org. To find out more about Sunset Piano and their wonderful documentary film, 12 Pianos, go to sunsetpiano.com. Stephanie mentioned their community partner, the Community Music Center. You can find out more about the Community Music Center in episode 44 of this special series on our website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community and the special COVID-19 series page. We hope that you enjoyed the insights, points of view, and personal stories from the voices of changemakers and their nonprofits and small businesses featured in this series. To find out more and get engaged with the nonprofits, small businesses, and staff members featured in the series, please go to my website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community to find links to the extended versions of these interviews and to listen to the entire series. After listening to these stories, we hope that you will consider making a donation and volunteering to provide a hand up to your fellow community members. Today's episode was made possible by the audio wizard and our associate producer, Eric Estrada, and the graphics magic of Casey Nance from Citron Studios, along with the wonderful crew at the San Francisco Public Press and KSFP. Voices of the Community is supported by a grant from the James Irvine Foundation, dedicated to a California where all low-income workers have the power to advance economically. More at irvine.org. Voices of the Community is a member of Intersection for the Arts, which allows us to offer you a tax deduction for your contributions. Please go to georgecoster.com and click on the donate link to make a donation to help us provide future shows just like this one. While you're on our website, you can enjoy our archived past shows, which feature community voices working on solutions to critical issues facing Northern California communities. And you can sign up for our newsletter to find out more about future shows, as well as shows and events from the organizations that are included in our episodes. Take us along on your next COVID walk by subscribing to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at George Coster, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas, so send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening.